Hi, I'd like to share something important and interesting that I've read from Alfred of the Plough. It is not that we cannot think. It is that we are afraid to think. It is so much easier to go with the tide than against it, to shout with the crowd than to stand lonely and suspect in the midst of it. Even some of us who try to escape this hypnotism of the flock do not succeed in thinking independently. We only succeed in getting into other flocks. Think of that avalanche of crazy art that descended on Earth some years ago. The cubists and dotists and spotists and futurists and other cranks who filled London with their shows and set all the advanced people singing their praises. They were not real praises that expressed genuine feeling. They were the artificial enthusiasms of people who wanted to join in the latest fashion. They would rave over any imbecility rather than not be in the latest fashion, rather than not be thought clever enough to find a meaning in things that had no meaning. It reminds me of the story of the two Italians who quarreled so long and so bitterly over the relative merits of Tasso and Ariosto that at last they fought a duel. And as they lay dying on the ground, one of them said to the other, "And to think that I have never read a line of them." "Nor I either," said the other. Then they expired. I do not suppose that story is true in fact, but it is true in spirit. Men are always dying for other people's opinions, prejudices they have inherited from somebody else, ideas they borrowed second-hand. Many of us go through life without ever having had a genuine thought of our own on any subject of the mind. We think in flocks, and once in the flock, we go wherever the bellwether leads us. We are too timid to think alone, too humble to trust our own feeling or our own judgment. We want some authority to lean up against, and when we have got it, we mouth its shibboleths with as little independent thought as children reciting the twice times table. I would rather a man should think ignorantly than that he should be merely an echo. I once heard an evangelical clergyman in the pulpit, speaking of Shakespeare, gravely remark that he could never see anything in that writer. I smiled at his naivety, but I respected his courage. He couldn't see anything in Shakespeare, and he was too honest to pretend that he could. That is far better than the affectations with which men conceal the poverty of their minds and their intellectual servility. The evil, I suppose, lies in our education. We standardize our children. We aim at making them like ourselves, instead of teaching them to be themselves. New incarnations of the human spirit, new prophets and teachers, new adventurers in the wilderness of the world. We're more concerned about putting our thoughts into their heads than in drawing their thoughts out. And we succeed in making them rich in knowledge, but poor in wisdom. They are not in fear of the stick, but they are in fear of the judgment of the world, which has no more title to respect than those old statues of Oxford, which we laugh at today. The truth, I fear, is that thought does not thrive on freedom. It only thrives under suppression. We need to have our liberties taken away from us in order to discover that they are worth dying for. Some food for thought. Thank you for listening.